Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone enjoyed a delightful lunch and had a chance to connect and exchange ideas with fellow participants. And as we have the very beautiful morning, I would like to wrap up what we have done this morning. First, we have the keynote about AI and medicine, a collaboration between engineers and doctor by Professor Eric and Professor Anjali. And we have the keynote too about early insights into cardiovascular risks, aging, and vision health using AI retinal screening. Also, keynote 3, we have the Pao Tang, Better Health for Thai Alls, for all Thais by Mr. Payong, which is very popular and famous in Thailand right now because we all use Pao Tang as our newest application that every Thai knows. And after the coffee break, we have the 4th keynote about privacy risks and safety of Gen AI, implications and recommendations of healthcare industry from Professor Lam Kuan Yan, and the panel discussion, which is run by Professor Dr. Yongyut Siriwathana Akson, Professor Dr. Michelle McConnell, Dr. Shong Wai-young, Dr. Grit Paka Bunfeung, and also Ms. Nadia Sutikun Panich, which I said we have a very wonderful morning, and I believe that this afternoon will also be enjoyable too. So, for this afternoon, we're moving forward into another exciting part of our program, a special remarks session titled From Pilot to Practice, Lesson in Scaling Digital Health Innovation. In this session, we'll hear from 2 distinguished experts who have played key roles in advancing digital health solutions from concept to large-scale implementation. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Evgeny Shvarov, CVC Fund Manager at InterSystems. He managed the venture fund of InterSystems Corporation, which provides grants and invests in early-stage digital health and AI startups around the world. Mr. Shvarov is also the co-founder of Celestina's Digital Health Startups Incubator, supporting innovation and entrepreneurship in the health technology ecosystem. He unites startups, hospitals, and pharma to enable early innovation to find its first customer and enable InterSystems digital health interoperability to help the innovation implementation. And Mr. Julian Petrescu. He is a cell engineer in InterSystems. He has a strong interest in emerging technology and their transformative potential across industry. From advancement in artificial intelligence and virtual reality to the integration of system-on-a-chip solution, he is focused on how these innovations can drive organizational growth, improve cost effectiveness, and reshape operational efficiency. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Evgeny and Mr. Julian.
Thank you. Let's see how we can get PowerPoint to work. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us in this session. I am Julian. I'm doing business development for InterSystems in Southeast Asia, and my colleague Evgeny, who is in charge of developer and startup programs. And I would like to start by thanking the organizers for having us on this stage with so many distinguished speakers. So we are with InterSystems, and InterSystems is known, especially in this market, as a provider of electronic health records and data platform software. But we also have a strong interest and a strong presence in the startup space, and this is what we are here to talk about. So we'll talk about some of the startups we work with and what are some of the challenges we help them solve, and what are some of the topics we found important in growing, especially in health IT. So we'll go over some of those startups, and I'll ask Evgeny about his experience with them. So, Control. It's a robotics company that works with hospitals to deliver medications and things to the patients. Evgeny, can you talk about them a little bit?
Hi everyone. Yes, sure, Julian. Yes, and the audience. Yeah, Control Robotics. First of all, it's a Singaporean company, so it's from Southeast Asia. And as you can see from the name, they are coming with the robots to two industry verticals, like in hospitality and healthcare. And one of the lessons they learned, and we learned together with them, that yes, maybe robots are coming, but not now yet, because in fact, hotels and actually hospitals and the particular all the environment is still for humans, not for robots yet. And so robots facing a lot of issues, like just even in navigation over hospital, for example. One of the key challenges I can mention is that how robots can travel between levels in a hospital just to deliver some medicine, for example. Yeah, and but we are helping them with some challenges, and Control Robotics uses InterSystems Iris for health to really talk to electronic health record systems within hospitals, so that helps them to manage patient data in a safe environment, and also change electronic health records. For example, when they delivered medicine, then when they if a patient followed adherence and so on tasks. And also what we like about Control, that they save so much time of clinicians and personnel to let them more focused on healthcare.
So it's essentially interoperability which provides data to the robots based on the medical records, so that robots know where to go in the hospital and where to deliver medications and food and so on. So basically access to data in a hospital is important. It's what is powering these robots.
Yeah, exactly. So that with Control Robotics allows hospitals to transfer some operations from some routine operations to robots, because they can work 24/7. They don't have vacations. Yes, we help that sensitive data and interoperability tasks are being solved in a best way, and allow robots to be introduced into processes in providing healthcare.
And I see this keeps moving by itself. So moving on to Evidently, which is a observability stack for AI systems.
Yes, and Evidently AI is a very interesting example of that represent the challenges we are facing when we are trying to enable artificial intelligence into healthcare environment, and actually in the spheres that are important in our daily life, and where regulations and where some practices should be followed. So what Evidently is focused, and they, as we know, generative AI, it has the feature like a nature of hallucinating. But sometimes when we need to use a generative AI-based solution, it's super important that in some cases it should not hallucinate, shouldn't invent something. The wording should be controlled. Yes, and this is where Evidently is trying to make a solution. So they introduce a testing system, like a second opinion over generative AI solutions, and it helps to test it through. And what is the most important, Evidently AI, with help of InterSystems Iris vector search, helps to introduce guardrails that work in real time with generative AI solutions. For example, when we this allows to introduce Gen AI and LLM-based solutions and RAG solutions into environment when it talks publicly, and sometimes it being used in CDS solutions, and so where it is crucial that information is used, introduced by Gen AI engines follows regulations. It's accurate, and it even can be part of what we introduce as requirements and certification for medical devices. Yes, and InterSystems Aries for Health and our vector search technology helps evidently AI to operate in solutions and data stores where it is crucial that data that is hosted with InterSystems Aries cannot be shared with should stay within the hospital environment or or other secure environment. Thank you.
Great. So let's look at the next one. So BloodGPT, test interpretation, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, thank you, Julian. That's another thing, yes. And as you can see from the name, so many companies just really follow this Gen AI approach and paradigm that goes into healthcare as well. As we can, BloodGPT is focused on explainability of blood and other lab reports. And again, what is important here is that a lot of people got used to, for example, share these reports with OpenAI and some other Gen AI services, but maybe it's not the case since this week. I think it's not allowed anymore. So, but I may be mistaken. But what BloodGPT is focused here, they do this, but they focused on the accuracy. So they don't want to please you with the answers, but they rather focused on whether all the figures in lab reports are accurate. And we are helping BloodGPT to host patient data with our InterSystems file repository, which is part of InterSystems Aries for Health platform. And also we're helping them to solve the interoperability tasks talking to electronic health record systems.
Okay, and I think this is the last one, Coordinista. They optimize field care delivery.
Coordinista represents another branch of solutions that are trying to save caregivers and nurses' time so that they can, and clinicians' time, that they can spend more time on healthcare, not on a routine operations or like or time-consuming operations. And what is Coordinista focus is, like sounds from their name, they're helping with logistics operations for nurses, help them to find like the most optimal way on their like daily agenda for giving care. So that means they need to interact with several different hospital systems, several electronic health records, and InterSystems Aries for Health nicely helps them to enable this connectivity with the different systems to follow different data standards and do it in a safe environment.
Thank you. So just some of the common themes, some of the common issues that we saw and that where we try to help the startups that we talked about to scale and to grow into the healthcare ecosystem. First of all, data, of course, is very important. Healthcare generates large amounts of data, uses large amounts of data, so data is key for AI. Data is key for all of the problems we're trying to solve. So that means in order to work with data You have to deal with the healthcare standards, you have to deal with the interoperability in healthcare, there's multiple data models, and there's the question of scalability. More data is generated and used over time. Obviously, it's the regulatory environment, which I talked about a little bit yesterday in my presentation. External regulatory factors, which is ever-evolving. New rules and regulations keep getting added all the time, but also internal, inside the organization. One hospital group can have different rules for each of the hospitals which are part of the group. You cannot assume they're all the same. So you need to be able to adapt to this. And of course, it's the issue of trust. There's high walls around clinical systems, so it's not easy to access for the right reasons. So establishing partnerships both with technology vendors and with the other stakeholders are key. And that being said, let's review some of the involvement of InterSystems with startups.
Yeah, thank you, Julian. Yes, and we in InterSystems, we think that innovation is not only important, like it's kind of mandatory, and we invest in innovation, and in our way, like our approach here, we can name it like a holistic approach to support innovation. So and we are starting from the space where innovative idea appears, and here we happy to be a partner with MIT, and so we are proud to participate in MIT Hacking Master maybe for a decade or more. And then we support ideators in incubators where we help the idea to grow from like teaming maybe to a pilot. This is we support this with our Celestinus startup incubator that will start. We will be gathering a new cohort, and we'll start in next February. And also, a few years ago, we introduced InterSystems Corporate Venture Fund that provides non-dilutive grants. It's cash money to support pilots innovators can introduce in healthcare. Yeah, and we also invest in equity in early stage startups. Thank you, Julian.
The QR code that those who are interested can scan to sign up for the program, correct?
Yes, thank you, Julian. We refer to innovators here in the hall. Please don't hesitate. Use this QR code, or like just talk to us, come to us to discuss to our booth. So we would love to talk to you and discuss how we can help you in your innovation.
And that concludes our quick introduction to the startup program at InterSystems. Thank you very much, and looking forward for the rest of the event.
Thank you so much, Mr. Evgeny Shvarov and Mr. Julian Petrescu, for your insightful and inspiring sharing. So now, moving to our second panel discussion of the day. It's about AI clinical trials, Southeast Asia as a sandbox. In this panel, we'll explore how artificial intelligence is shaping the future of clinical research and how Southeast Asia can serve as a dynamic testing ground for innovation and collaboration. We are honored to have with us as a group of our outstanding experts, Mr. Sensu, Faculty Director of MIT Hacking Medicine, Dr. Ronashai Jaransi, Lecturer from the Faculty of Medicine, Sirirat Hospital, Mrs. Supishaya Pupisut, Co-founder and CEO of Percepta, and Professor Anjali Sastry, Senior Lecturer at MIT Sloan School of Management. Our moderator is Mr. Tabish Sangra. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming all of our panelists and moderator for panel 2.
Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. So we are taking the most coveted session of the day, the one right after lunch. So I hope all of you guys are well fed and super alert. How many had coffee in the room? Okay, I had 2 espresso shots, so I know I'm ready to go. A warm welcome to the wonderful panelists, Zen, Dr. Sochao, and Professor Anjali. Hello everyone, I'm Tabish Sangrar. I'm the co-founder CEO of Reclaim Health, which is an AI startup. And we're here to tackle a practical question. Can Southeast Asia become the world's proving ground for innovative, exportable AI in healthcare? And our goal is to leave you with a practical handbook of what to test, how to test, what to develop, and learn from some of the best in the business here. So jumping right in, Zen, you've been here in Southeast Asia for a couple of years, one of the founder members of HackMed, one of the arguably the most successful sandboxes globally now. So from one sandbox to the other, what do you think it takes for Southeast Asia to be a living sandbox for healthcare AI? And what are some of the things that this region can do better to create some innovation that can be exported globally?
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you to Thailand for, showing up. But we've also heard, from Dr. McConnell this morning how Thailand was crucial in the clinical trial innovation and really proving out the data. And from my perspective, there are so many tectonic shifts in healthcare going around the world in every healthcare system. AI is washing over healthcare, and in fact, the healthcare industry looks like it's double the rate of adoption of AI of other industries. So as opposed to the most of history of the last few decades where healthcare underinvested in technology and is a late adopter, we're seeing them being an early adopter here. And it's because we have so many shortages of the professionals. We have capacity problems. We have payment changes. And amid all of that, I believe that startups are the change agents in healthcare because the biggest systems and incumbents and med tech companies are really not solving a lot of these things. And at the heart of it, every healthcare company is a data company, and it's data to prove the efficacy, to prove the outcomes, and to prove those beyond the sterile clinical trials that happen in hospitals, and really, generate the real-world evidence. And are these technologies and solutions adopted and taken and used in the real world? And how can we boost the efficacy in the real world outside of the lab? And in order to do that, we've got to try things. But you can't move fast and break things like in Silicon Valley, right, in healthcare, because you really, don't want to do harm to patients. And so you've got to sandbox things, and you've got to test things, and you've got to improve it before you lock it down into clinical trials. And in the US, because of the FDA, because of the conservative nature of big bureaucratic companies and HHS, it's hard to try things. It's hard to test things. It's very expensive. And so what we've seen over the last couple decades is that the locus of innovation has moved outside of the US. It's moved to Latin America. It's moved to Southeast Asia and China. And they're proving those things. And America will benefit because human biology is human biology. And we know what the gold standards are, and we've got to close these gaps. And different countries will close them differently. And different solutions need to be customized to the country. That's why hacking medicine comes around the world, because we don't just export things from America and it's right for you. It's really the capabilities, the local capabilities on the ground of the healthcare system, of the formulary. And so you have to tailor it. And so it's, Thai startups for Thai healthcare and Thai people, by and for. And the same is true in India. And the same is true in Indonesia, where I'm living and watching this. And so for all of that, many things will be lower cost, proven efficacy, and they will boomerang back to the US and everywhere else.
Love it. That sets such amazing context for this discussion and for taking this forward, and like a good segue into the work that Anjali, you've been doing on the front lines, right? And especially with real-world evidence. What are some of your learnings from your work, and how can AI play a crucial role in leading with real-world evidence and some of the pharmacovigilance challenges that you see?
So, why am I on the stage? In part because I've worked directly in healthcare delivery with MIT students and colleagues, directly tackling challenges that providers have framed for us. And I entered this domain as an existing management scholar, researcher, instructor, and entering healthcare is eye-opening because as in other high reliability industries, you have to get everything right for the outcome to work. The right data, the right personnel with the right skills, the right equipment, the right meds. And there's massive scope to apply. When I first started, the thought was the tools that we teach and work on at MIT could be used to improve healthcare around the world, from logistics and inventory management to using IT and data in smart ways. And one of my early learnings was actually, it was a request from clinicians and pharmacists in in Ghana, saying, we actually have across a lot of sub-Saharan Africa a dearth of knowledge about how the meds that we're prescribing at the population level, how they're working. In other words, we need better pharmacovigilance. And if you look at the global data on pharmacovigilance, there's a massive underreporting. This is the system that's supposed to be tracking adverse events. So you prescribe a drug and it doesn't work out for the patient. It should be reported. There's a global system, as many of you know, but it's really underinvested in. So part of my thinking on this topic was, there's a system that makes sense, that seems rational, that's been built, but it's not being used. Will that happen to AI, right? That's one of the things that has been on my mind a lot, because it seems very clear that we should have an effective pharmacovigilance system. It's in everyone's interest. But the flip side of tracking adverse events is also mining real-world data to better understand how a given medication does affect a different genetic group or group with a different diet, and so on. So while Zen argued the body's the same everywhere, there's also real differences in the impact of a given medication or intervention or prescription for behavioral or other change. So how do we really make sure that we are using real-world data to both understand new uses for existing meds, and that's a great reason to care, and better understand prescribing and drug interactions. But is there much more? I am sure. So when it comes to AI, how do we design our systems of tracking and handling both good and bad outcomes in ways that let us make the system better? Because we're not doing it when it comes to meds. So why would we, how are we going to make it happen when it comes to AI? Maybe that's too philosophical and broad a question for this moment in the day, but I thought I'd raise that with all of you.
Thank you. And not at all. Southeast Asia in general is looked at as being a little too flexible, if I may say it. So, open question: how can we prevent this just being go regulation shopping, and build real guardrails that enable us to develop innovation that is exportable? As you're aware, the EU already has the AI Act in place, and the UK has already put in place the yellow scorecard, which allows for AI model labels and clear informability with every single AI model that's been put out there. So how do we harden some of the regulations in this part of the world, and that lends itself to better innovation? Would you like to take that?
Yeah, sure. So I think regarding that, actually because I'm in the diagnosis, AI for diagnosis part on the imaging, and I learned that actually a lot of countries are doing small scale kind of proof of concept to build, to learn about AI before they moving into larger or more impact use cases. For example, like in the UK, they're doing lung cancer screening, a national lung cancer screening. But they started with only small group of people, and then they kind of control the environment, and then they learn and then get the feedback from what could go wrong on that part. And once they can prove the clinical value of such use case and what could go wrong, so they can start planning to go further in more a real national scale on that. And that also rolling into other countries as well, like some of the organizations, they start doing AI and chest x-ray on lung cancer screening, not just low dose CT. But they ran into like 20 countries across the globe, but in a smaller scale, or like, for example, like in just part of the city, to learn how does that go. And then I think that's a good way to actually, because like we have to start thinking of how AI be used in terms of use case, and that what we really need is that we need to see the clinical proof, because like a lot of one of the barrier for new technology to come into the market is there is no trust in the technology just yet, right? And then when we have the proof, the real proof in the real world, in a small scale, or wherever that the technology has the, let's say like the indication of use in that particular scope, I think we can start small with that and then can roll out later. But that's
such a salient point. As with any new technology, it first is met with a lot of mistrust, then a lot of denial, and then a reluctant adoption, and then finally just becomes mainstream. Here in Thailand, and Dr. T, I'm just going to come to you in a bit. There was a study with Google where they wanted to apply AI in retinopathy, and they figured out and found out everything that could possibly break, because lighting, the quality of input data, just the diversity in patients gave varied results which kind of failed the entire experiment. So Dr. TM, in your work as a researcher in the AI space, working at the bleeding edge of innovation, what are some of your findings with regards to making AI safe, trusted, and repeatable for one of the most sensitive use cases, that is healthcare?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think this is a really, really important issue for making AI safe and generalizable. I observed on a lot of academic conference review for papers, and one of the comments that I give a lot of the times is that I don't know if your model will generalize. And I think this is also an inherent problem with medical domain, because data set is expensive. So it's really hard to curate a large scale data set. And oftentimes, because the research originates in the Western part of the world, much of the data set is more Western focused. So when we want to use the model developed here, it could be really challenging, and the model might not work like right out of the box. Speaking to the diabetic retinopathy model, actually, I think I have a dear friend who works on this, and he told me that Dr. Mine, actually, I think he is also in the audience, that he worked on this particular problem, and he found that the model that we can find on the internet doesn't actually work for the setting that we have in hospital at Sierra. Then he had to do a lot of additional work in order to fine-tune and adapt the model so that it actually works. So I feel like the way to make AI safe is to first make sure that it's generalizable. So you need to create some sort of a data set that is representative enough of the use case that you want to do. And then you slowly roll it out in the way that ICE just suggested, where maybe you can start with something small and see how it works, and then make sure that you have human supervision at the same time. I also want to add that a lot of time it's not just about the model itself too. It's also about the people who use it. And I find that one of the really important things that we all need to work on, especially in Southeast Asia and in Thailand, is education, to make sure people understand what AI can do and what AI cannot do. And to be honest, like I haven't been in a region for too long, but one of the impression that I get is that to many people, AI and ChatGPT are the same thing. But we all know, yeah, I think a lot of people, well, maybe not ChatGPT, but generative AI. When they say AI, people think of generative AI, something that can write emails for you and things like that. But I think many of us would know that AI is much more than that. Like even the automatic windshield wiper, you could classify that as AI, because normally you need to use your own intelligence to turn it on and off, right? So I feel like understanding what AI really is, what it can do, what it cannot do, when will it fail, and things like this is very important. And I feel like the education system that we have here doesn't lend itself too well to that, because a lot of time people, so here in Thailand, students choose their major right out of high school. Like when I was 18, I don't know what I like or what I want to do, but we are being forced to choose right out of the gate. So there's no room for exploration or room for really trying something else or learning something outside of your field. And I feel like this is something that's going to be really hard to change, but I think that there are ways that we can address that for sure.
Thank you, Dr. TM, for that. Anjali, you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I wanted to add a thought triggered by the comments I just heard. You use the word harden the regulations, and I think it's important to look at the value of the principles we've all been laying out and the need for clear regulation as also enabling. It's also freeing, right? So it's hardened in that it's oriented towards protecting safety and building trust and all these things we've been talking about, but also knowing the boundaries and knowing the guidelines can be freeing and enabling. So thinking about regulation that way, like why is it good to have clear regulation if you are a developer, if you're an innovator? I think it's really important to make sure to really consider regulation from that point of view. Because knowing the constraints or knowing the principles and having them crystal clear is really helpful when you're thinking about trying something new, rather than assuming that innovators always want complete freedom. They actually don't always want complete freedom. They actually want to know how to do it right and where they can go and where they mustn't go. So I think that's really interesting. Another tension we're going to see playing out, I think, through this conversation and others, is on scale. So it's good advice and required to try smaller tests and so on. The market and industry is pushing for having a scale story ready or just going to scale as soon as you can. And I think kind of acknowledging that tension and trying to approach it creatively and learn from each other is really needed. So my final thought on the data linkage to what you're saying here too is we're all going to try things maybe small, maybe succeed, maybe fail. In science, we know there's a huge bias against publishing null results or negative results that are not supporting your bold, exciting hypothesis. How are we going to handle this in AI too? So are we publishing null or negative results or disappointing results? If we don't do that, then all of these great ideas may never actually deliver the way they could. So the small thing, I think, needs to also go hand in hand with, fessing up when it doesn't do what you think it should do and valuing that professionally, maybe even more than success. Okay.
This is so
Stop.
pertinent for decision makers in healthcare systems as well, and also for startups. So I have a question both to you, Zen and Ice. As a startup, what constitutes minimal viable evidence for success that will enable a healthcare administrator or a stakeholder to even give your solution a try? I mean, you've been through the different grinds and iterations. Some thoughts on that can help startups in the room here?
Well, I think you have to just be intellectually honest and really see the aspects in the real world, and you don't see those until you go and you try to take these solutions into people's homes, into the train station. And so much of trust and so much of convenience and the other aspects of performance that do affect real world outcomes happen out where healthcare needs to be delivered, especially in the global South. You have to be creative. There's new opportunities, but you want to be looking at, you want to be tracking your outcomes. You want to have registries, right? Just the fact that you're putting everyone in a registry. That's what changed pediatric oncology. That's what we need across so many other things. And so most groups or companies wait a little too long, and then they've hardened their clinical study and they've hardened their business model and they're inflexible, and then they're kind of trapped on this path for years proving it out, and it's very capital intensive. And so we are much more in favor of, as has been mentioned before, quickening the feedback loops, making iterative, incremental, and also adding, and creating very different combinations, because technology, from a public health standpoint, we want the quadruple aim of healthcare, right? Better quality, lower cost, improved access to get out to all the people that haven't been touched and are left out of these systems, whether through socioeconomic status or just the fact that everything is bundled up in the hospital. In America and everywhere else, we're pushing it to the home. We're pushing it out. We're hollowing out the hospitals. They're becoming just giant ICU places, and then everything is happening in the hubs and the spokes. And it needs to do that in order to accomplish the quadruple aim. The last aim being reducing burnout, because we have an epidemic of burnout after COVID, and across the world in every country, we're having other capacity and demand issues. And so technology is the only thing that can really scale medicine and accomplish that quadruple aim. We're seeing that already. For instance, one of my companies, Abridge, which is one of the pioneer AI and healthcare companies that's just focused on the simple stuff, documentation, requiring no FDA oversight, right? This is just helping give the doctors back time. Well, I've looked for burnout solutions, and we've had that in our class for over a decade, but it turns out that when you can save the doctor 2 hours to 3 hours a day, which they're doing at scale, you eliminate all of the time after they put their kids to bed, called pajama time, that everyone has to do to just get the right stuff into these billing systems. They're not healthcare systems, they're billing systems. And if you can save them time, by month 3 of their use at scale across tens of thousands of doctors, burnout is being reduced by 50%. Right? And so we have to keep our clinicians in their roles and make them more efficient and give them more of the sacred time between doctor and patient to be an advisor, right? And we can do that with algorithmic care and some of these new technologies and diagnostics, and you can then retain your soul as a healthcare professional and go have dinner at home with your children, which you haven't done in years. And so, just the power of that and the fact that they have over 250 of the biggest healthcare systems in the world now, and that's just happened in the last 2 years. The pace is changing, and we're going to have so many more examples every month of this, not just in radiology, not just in diagnostics, but the documentation and the unsexy areas in the bowels of healthcare. You know, Path AI is a multi-billion-dollar company that is digitizing pathology. There are so many examples now coming out of Boston, but we're going to have just as many examples originating in Thailand, in India, and boomeranging back. That the next decade is just going to be accelerated for all of this. And we have to learn fast, and we have to be intellectually honest. And yes, is there bad behavior of businesses and med tech corporations and pharmaceutical companies? Usually it's because they're trapped in those business models and they're just trying to sell what they have, as opposed to really reinvent the product and the workflows and all of the things that actually go into real healthcare.
Great example with the Scribe. It's such a good example of change in customer and consumer behavior and what the client is willing to pay for. Traditionally, we used to say, you know, two axioms are true. In healthcare, the hospital is not going to pay for anything that makes the clinician's life better, and they're going to pay for everything that helps them increase revenue. But that's changing. Is there anything that you'd like to share from your experience as to what constitutes success?
Actually, for me, I think definitely I agree to all the points that you guys share. But for me, I think the minimal viable way to make this success is the sandbox is very important, but I don't think it's just like the area or where. It's all, not just where and who, right? But it's also about the mindset that it has to come on both sides, the developer and the users. The developer, like you said, like is not like putting the solution to their hands without realizing what kind of problem, what kind of day-to-day basis that the clinicians has to face. So we have to start, the developer has to start with what kind of problem, and then how do we solve that problem, and how do we fit the solution so that the clinicians will be willing to use, and then once they adopt, it's actually not going to be the burden to them to actually adopt the technology. But on the other side, I think the users also has to have very open mind. Because like at first when we launched our AI 8 years ago, there was almost no one that trusting or believing that AI would actually help them in the real clinical value. And then they were scared that we're gonna replace their work. But we had to find small group of early adopters who are willing to try out new things. And then it could be good or it could be bad. It doesn't matter. They just want to try. And the quick feedback loop is everything. Because like when we started, we will never ever learn what kind of mistake, what kind of loopholes that we're gonna have without putting into the real battlefield, right? And that's actually we learned the most when we actually put it out into the 10 group of pilot sites, and then we got a lot of feedback. I mean, maybe strong feedbacks from the users, and then that's how we actually learn. Because like for medical world, it usually everything is settled. Like we have accumulated years of training, and then whenever we practice anything, it has to be guideline or something like that. And technology comes so fast, and then we cannot afford to have the guideline or anything. So we have to somewhat learn along the way and build the guideline, and then getting that feedback loop and then improve it before we actually launch it into the market. So that I think
So strong feedback loops, working closely with the customer, I think very, very salient points. Dr. Tiam, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I really love what Zen and I has been saying that around making AI really usable for the user, which is healthcare professionals, right? As an academic, a lot of times when we publish paper or we develop an AI model, we are so focused on accuracy, on AUC, and things like that. But oftentimes, it takes much more than just the model itself in order to make something that's really useful. You have to work on the infrastructure that surrounds it to make sure that the user can actually use them and then give them back their precious time, right? We have seen examples of places where we have great AI model. They have great AI model, and but they didn't have like the right infrastructure for it. And oftentimes it takes them 10 clicks before displaying AI result and things like that. And by that time, it's much easier for the doctors to read the imaging themselves. So these kind of examples is something that we really need to avoid. And when we think about success and how we measure the performance of the model, we need to think about how much time does it save for doctors and things like that. And I feel like I haven't seen enough of this line of work. They exist, but I don't feel like it's enough out there yet.
Yeah, I mean, great moment to move and talk about the ethics and regulations that surround, AI today. We definitely don't want to move fast and break patients, but we also don't want 5-year paralysis, right? So, in your view, what are some of the key areas that need to be regulated, especially when it comes to deploying AI in healthcare? And what are some of the guardrails that you'd like to see implemented that you haven't seen so far? Anyone can take it, yeah?
For me, again, I haven't been in the region for very long, but I feel like information handling is one of the things that we could really do better here. Just for an example, in Thailand we have national ID number, which is almost the same as social security number. You can use it to get a loan from banks and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure if you spend 30 minutes online, you might find my national ID, because everybody is asking for it, and we don't have a clear way of how are you gonna safeguard my information, right? So I feel like having right now everything feels like people have implicit trust because they don't have any other choice. Everybody is handling their data this way, but I think to make AI safe and to comply with ethics rules, I feel like we need to do better in terms of how we safeguard patient information and things like that. I mean, we're doing pretty well, and sometimes there has to be a balance too, because sometimes it's too well that it's not useful, and then sometimes it's too loose. I think when it's really important, we are doing quite well, and I think there was a famous case a couple of months ago where patient information was on a banana bag or something like that, and I think that hospital get fined. But that's one of the examples of things that we should improve up here.
I mean, this just sorry, Ice, go on.
So I think for chest X-ray AI, in my case, it's been in the market for a pretty long time in Thailand, and then we did have a lot of guardrails, and then it's developing along the way. But I think the most important one is that is to have the professional college to actually be the one who, because like they probably know the best, and then they know the problem the best, and how with the technology will be involving into their workflow and help solving the problems or solving the hurdles that they're seeing. But I think it's sometimes, in case of like AI for chest X-ray, it's actually turning into not just one professional college. It's turning into the multidisciplinary, because it's very complex. Sometimes we addressing the lung cancer problem, and so I think it's something that multi-colleges, professional colleges has to be working together to see how to see how the technology could improve the operation, the workflow of the screening or lung cancer screening, and it has to be fast. And they have to put in the mindset that it will not be perfect, but we're gonna start with something this, and then we learn how what's the result gonna be, and then we have the second version. So I think that's one of the thing, and also one of to address on the ethic part and the guardrail on the ethic part, like because a lot of people thinking that AI might be overruling our thoughts if we kind of bias towards like, oh, we're gonna ask AI first and then we get the answer and we take that as a truth. It's the same for medical AI as well. Like they're afraid that students will be less keen on reading images. But the way we do is that we work with the professional college to, it's called hanging protocol. Basically like until the workflow, the AI will not be showing the result first. We have to let the clinicians interpret the images first, and then AI will be as a supporting tool. But once they learn, and then once they know the good and the bad and the limitations of AI, everything, then when we can change a little bit of the workflow, or we can mix things up a little bit. So I think that's
pretty much in silent mode. That's a technique that's being used in clinical trials a lot. Zen, you had something to add to it?
Well, I think when I think about regulation, you know, I think about that social contract between society and healthcare and the regulators that are supposed to protect us. You know, in America, we are watching the rapid destruction of trust, and I've spent time in China, which is, I think, you know, I define as a low trust society, which is becoming more trusting in products, and then we've got the U.S., which is a high trust society, and we're you know, through fake news and our government and our own president, we're really destroying trust in these institutions. And at the same time, we've got new technologies and new techniques like AI that the regulators don't know how to regulate. And yet they're creating these artificial barriers, and you know, the ethics of innovation. You know, what are the ethics of not reaching more patients, right? What are the ethics of it's a whole complex thing. I mean, healthcare is so complex that we get lost in that complexity. And the question is, what techniques can we use to chop through that Gordian knot of complexity and simplify it? And one of the techniques is just focus on the patient first, or focus on the key user, and you know, kind of the building blocks of design thinking for the U.S. But trust has been a theme through this entire conference, and we're in the period of creative destruction. I'm an optimist, and that's the optimistic view of what's happening in America. And I think that's in sharp contrast to Thailand, where I've gotten a bunch of healthcare myself, and you have such high trust, and it's a beautiful thing, high trust in the institutions and in healthcare and in the ethics of the healthcare systems that you have. And you know, we will need to learn from Thailand more than Thailand needs to learn from the US.
Patient centricity is pretty much a large theme even with most AI applications now, especially with the agentic AI workflows, which allow for highly personalized care as well as you know, outcomes. Anjali, you wanted to add to something.
Yeah, I always have something to add. But in this case, I was reflecting on our charts, right? We are thinking about Southeast Asia as the sort of venue for innovation in AI and understanding some of the potentials. Right? So I was thinking a bit about that, and one point I came to, and I'd love folks to weigh in, is that I do think that innovation in AI and many other domains is not solely the purview of the small startup. I think that companies and family firms are incredibly important. I mean, obviously, regulators and nonprofit institutions are, part of the whole ecosystem just as important as others. But I was thinking about, what is it about companies in this region that maybe would help to spur innovation on the proper use of AI? So one of the things we see is that companies can, perhaps more easily than individuals or small groups, mine their own history and come up with, for instance, I'm thinking about an idea that comes out of one big company called learning before doing, right? So we're going to try something new, but before you do it, think of other things that have been tried at the company and bring those folks in and do a retrospective or an after-action review, but before you do it, and get them to weigh in and contribute their point of view. And if we go in a totally different direction, the technical direction, I was listening to you say you don't know, and it's true, how things will turn out till you try it in the real world. But on the other hand, simulation is getting ever better and better. So why aren't we using more simulation to unpack the possible ways in which a given intervention might unfold? So we have these other tools, vicarious learning, learning from others, smart advice getting, simulation. These are tools that maybe are not fully as easily available to an individual entrepreneur as you might be able to get in some other settings. So I'd urge us all to think creatively about how to tap into some of those incredibly valuable assets, but at the same time, minimize the limitations of the constraints of history and precedents and norms, but draw on them as cleverly as you can to think of ways to leverage the relationship you've built with your customers, with your colleagues, with the government. Those are assets also, as well as constraints. So, that's just a sort of random thought, but I think I wanted to make sure there was some voice for that in this discussion.
No, I mean, love that thought, because that kind of segues into my next question to ICE, that as startups, what are some of the key successes that you've encountered along the way when it comes to getting to traction? So especially from an idea stage to early validation, and then actually getting to revenue. Like, could you share some of your journey along that path?
Sure. So I think what we started with is that we started with problems, for real. We go and observe what does radiologists do on a daily basis, and then we go out to the hospital outside Bangkok to see how it goes, how their life's going, and then what is actually happening in their own world. And so we started with that, and then what we think is that we're trying to benchmark with Siraj and the global player, so that we gonna deliver high quality product. And then once we hit that, what we really care is that, because we think that if it's the technology, even if it's 99.99% accurate, it's still not gonna be useful might not bring any clinical value at all. So we're trying to put more focus onto user experience and user interface, so that it will be so easy that everyone using our AI gonna be much low lower learning curve, and also we're trying to solve what kind of problems that they have when they're in the frontier. So that, for example, hospital outside of Bangkok, they might not have specialists at all, and then the workflow will be totally different. And then when we trying to adapt, so what kind of workflow that you should be using AI for, and then what kind of use case that you should be doing. So so we accumulating that so that we can address all of the use cases that actually real in the field, and then we're trying to put that into the scale. And also one of the very important thing is that because when we say healthcare is a laggard in terms of like adopting technology, I think, right, it's true in one point and it's not true in the other point. Like Dr. Tiem said, everyone are using Notebook LLM, they're using ChatGPT, they're kind of like, I know about AI already. But in fact, we have to do a lot of education to really tell them what kind of like use case that they should be using to fully utilize and then gain the value out of AI, so that their life would be easier with AI. So that's that what we've been doing in the past 8 years, and we're still doing it, because technology is not about just technology, it's about use case and about workflow that we have to educate them so that they can fully realize the value.
I wanted to touch upon regional expansion and collaboration as well, but before that you mentioned about using a proprietary AI, so I wanted to geek out a little bit with Dr. Tiam. And for all the corporate students, startups in the room, what is your advice on pursuing, building on state-of-the-art frontier models vis-a-vis trying and building small language models on local data sets to achieve, more focused and precision outcomes? Like, I mean, if I was a startup or a corporate and wanted to build out a very, very specific use case, localized solution, what would your advice be in terms of just the direction in which the team should be going in?
I think, so as with any work or projects, I feel like you need to be clear first on what kind of problems that you want to solve. I feel like a lot of times we are excited about the solution, and we forget what's the problem that we are trying to solve. And many times you don't need a language model, for example. But let's say we already passed that, and we feel like language model is really something that we need to work on. Training a new language model or even fine-tuning it takes a lot of resources. Even a small model like a 4 billion model, it takes a lot of resource, a lot of GPUs, and a lot of data in order to make it work, as well as what big companies have put out. So my advice would be trying hard to stay away from actually fine-tuning like a full model and things like that. And many times the models that had been trained, that they're put out, is already well trained enough to handle a lot of different tasks that you want to throw at them. So I definitely look at lower cost techniques like prompting or few short examples and things like that. And should come to pass, there are still some techniques that that require a lot less resource. This is really geeking out, but there's a technique called LoRA, or low rank adaptation, where you can train like a small weight on top of the model that you have, and that has been shown to be really helpful. So I think it really depends on the problem that you want to do, but I think just realizing that training a language model is really hard, and it's just much easier to use whatever people
Yes,
have turned
and
out.
my apologies for leading with that question because I wanted to ask a deeper question there. What can the government do in order to help corporations, startups to overcome precisely this problem that you articulated, the paucity of resources, the scarcity of compute, to build more indigenous solutions that come out of this region, right? So we truly are in a position to export AI innovation from this part of the world to areas like the US and EU.
I think one of the more direct thing that the government can do is to provide those computation power, right? And I think that is exactly what Thai government has been doing. I believe we have a compute cluster that is available to a lot of people called Lanta. I have not personally used them, so I cannot comment on its usage. But these kind of solution exist. Another thing that I feel like can be done, and this is something that I've been personally struggling with, is the funding rules. So a lot of times, funding. So there's this long-standing way of working. It seems that funding are not supposed to be used for durable goods, and computers are considered durable goods. So whatever fundings that we can find is not supposed to be used for these compute machine that we would need. And because of a lot of data privacy issue, it makes a lot more sense for us to have our own computers than buying cloud credits where we need to export patient data out to cloud. So I think this is not too surprising. I believe NSF in the US have similar rules, but they seem to be a little bit more flexible in terms of if you absolutely need it, then sure you can buy. But I feel like in Thailand, we seem to be more rigid in that sense that, okay, you're not supposed to buy durable goods at all. And I think making exceptions or changing these rules for these particular category of things to buy maybe can help solve some of that computation problems.
Thank you, Dr. TM. Anjali.
No, it's
okay.
good. I'm just so fascinated that this challenge exists. So.
And actually, I think what they say that the university is supposed to be the one who support you to buy, and it takes a long time to, from conception to the machine arriving can take 2 years.
It's equally fascinating for me. I remember I was at the Aramco Innovation Center just a couple of weeks ago, and they showed me this really fancy office and fancy sandbox, and my question to them was, do you have H100s in there? Everything but that. So everyone's struggling with compute, right? So it's a universal ask everywhere. Ice and Zen, I had a question. When you're building startups in the region, and Zen, you've seen multiple iterations of that, of startups coming out of HackMed, what are some of the key features or aspects you've seen of these startups that have helped them scale really quickly and grow across regions? So like, I mean, ICE, if you're building in Thailand, I mean, how are you thinking about scaling to, scaling regionally and then internationally? So maybe Zen, you first, and then ICE.
Okay. Well, I think we're in such an interesting time for creativity and for, the barriers have been lowered for creating software, for creating hardware, for designing, for getting it distributed out into the world and close to your customers and being on the shelf when it's needed, when the doctor needs it. So, that stuff is accelerating, but we still have, not enough solutions targeted to these little segments of different users, right? Are you in the jungle in a small village, right? I'm living in a country with 75,000 small villages and 17,000 islands. It's perfect for telemedicine, but they still don't have it, but it's coming quick. You have single-payer systems where every citizen has an app, and now you can do so many things on top of it, and you can get that data, and you can create registries. So, those are the positives, and yet, I describe healthcare globally as this $8 trillion set of thousands of little multi-billion-dollar niches. And they're fragmented by specialty and by disease and by healthcare institutions and by those people with money and without. And each of those little segments needs a different solution oftentimes to actually be effective in the real world and even desired by that community. And so we need more entrepreneurs and we need more doctors who can straddle the clinical proof and then getting it out into the real world and using it. And so that's why we try to cross-train people like this. And I think that's one of the solutions to just accelerate things out into the real world.
For me, I think like to be able to scale, at first like I said, we were trying to sell AI. And then we were trying to sell AI, it was not really where it scaled because like, just like AI, whatever. But when we're starting to care more on the use cases and then we're trying to prove that this use case actually has the return on investment that highly efficient that you cannot do without AI. I think that's when people starting to realize, so this is the real value of it, and then they're starting to have word of mouth to go on and on, like, okay, so we use this, and then, trying to show off to another hospital. So I think that's how it's actually scale. We have to be keen on the use case that we are solving, and then we have to be excellent and has to have the competitive edge on that use case, and then repeat that use case with the right group of people who have the same or similar problem. So for me, like, so once we accumulated the use cases that we gather from many users, we starting to put technology into how do we scale in terms of implementation. So once there are more people who have the same problem, we can promptly deliver the solution. And I think, for example, like for my product, I believe that we're not gonna solve the problem that exists in the Western world, like in the US or in Europe, because like the problem is totally different. The workflow is totally different. So we have to have to focus on who our customer segment is, who has the same problem, that has the same settings that we can solve. So that's the way that we're gonna scale. I actually want to add a little bit more on how the government to help and to accelerate the innovation in Thailand and in the region. I think real collaboration is the key here, because like a lot of time that in Thailand we do things solo. We don't work together with different expertise and then collaborate and then trying to find the common ground that we could work together to make one thing big. And for example, like for AI, we probably have 10 different government agencies that take care of the same thing. So it's kind of the split of the effort and the split of the investment as well. So we think that, I think that if we combine and trying to nurture that with maybe champion on each different use cases, so that we can have like the pillar of new innovations.
Thank you for sharing that, Ice. Anjali?
So I've worked with hundreds of MIT students and alums, and I was pulling out some examples to answer your question. Thought I'd share a couple. So one is a student of mine. We worked completely closely for a full year, using the fact that I could give him academic credit for a well-constructed study. We did 3 back-to-back ones that he used to launch his company. And he found a problem that exists everywhere that doesn't seem like a big problem, but it meant that he could do his clinical trials simultaneously in 3 countries, in the US, UK, and in India. And he had a really big idea, and then we narrowed it down a lot to the simple problem of day of surgery cancellation. So patient arrives in the hospital, surgeon is there, team is there, everything's there, and the patient hasn't followed pre-op instructions. So how do you reduce, and hospitals know that number cold, right? Because it's a very costly, painful thing to deal with, is day of surgery cancellation. So even if it's only 0.5%, if you can notch that down, it's a huge win. So it's very, very easy for him to prove his case. He could get high volume from the India trial, right? He could get varied circumstances by doing NHS and a US hospital. So it was very easy for him to exit after just like 2 years, right? Because he could show this, and it led him, interestingly, we had started on a behavioral track. Then we went to this track that had some behavioral focus, but also just information. But he got really interested in that behavioral angle along the way, as did I. And that made me curious about other models like that. So I won't bore you with all of them. But that was an interesting example to me of going for scale from the start rather than proving first. Like, you have to be pretty bold and confident to simultaneously launch in 3 countries. But he knew the problem really well. Another example was another student, Anup, whose idea was a good idea, good enough to get funded as a nonprofit by the Gates Foundation. And he very cleverly got it right and then gave away that and built a for-profit on top of it, right? So this was a platform, the company's called Logistimo out of Bangalore, but Logistimo is last mile health logistics to make sure vaccines, anti-venom, which is huge need in a lot of rural areas, and other things were available. But once he perfected that for rural clinics in India, then he went to Africa, then he open sourced it, gave it away, and built small trucking. India doesn't have a good system for small truckloads, sharing truckloads. Like, there's a huge commercial market for efficient logistics. So he could parlay Logistimo into that and then take on other interesting sidelines. It's not easy to flip from a nonprofit to for-profit, so I'm not advising
Sam
that.
Altman would know a thing or two about
Yeah,
that.
I know. He should talk to Anup, who did it right. But there are lots of interesting examples of how you take a juicy problem and sort of tackle it in an interesting way that it also allows you to build up your know-how and prove the case and build scale. And I have many more to share because we have amazing ideas crossing our doors at MIT. And I think they're worth sharing. And there are a bunch here in Thailand, too. So
Those are perfect examples of the philosophy of hacking medicine. I love it.
No, thank you so much. I love my job. I need to thank Billet. I learned so much here. So we started with why Southeast Asia, why now, some of the problems, concerns, some of the solutions, real-world examples from amazing entrepreneurs like Ice, Zen, Anjali, and Dr. TM, how to solve them. So before we wrap up, quick question to everyone on the panel, and we'll start with Anjali. If we were to turn back the clock and you were fresh out of college, and in this AI boom that we are undergoing right now, what are the top 3 ideas that you would pick and run with and start a startup
you
in?
didn't give me any warning.
Oh, okay, yeah, this is rapid fire. Okay,
And
so,
I need 3 ideas?
okay, anyone. So, okay, okay, anyone can go first.
Okay.
I'll go first.
Okay,
I'll
go
go
for
first.
it.
Good.
If I were just graduating college right now, I would go to design school. Because I had never worked with designers. I've gotten to work with anthropologists and hardware and software, and it is such practical applied. I would go back to design school, and that would just be the starting point for where I decide.
Love it.
Okay, I got my idea.
Okay, go for it.
I would take the notion of personalization and really consider its massive potential impact across many domains. Personalized medicine, personalized learning, personalized jobs. Why can't we use AI to personalize roles within companies so that we're each doing the thing we're best at and the system is overall optimized, or at least better than it used to be? So I think there's massive scope to craft everything from treatments or clothes or chairs to, you know, experiences and learning that would really attend to things that are interesting, important, or sort of physical requirements or whatever. We don't need to live in a cookie cutter world.
Love it. So, D-School, hyper-personalization platform, ICE?
I don't know the use case gonna be yet, but if I were right off the bat, I would go and find what kind of healthcare spending or wellness spending in different countries, and maybe pick top 3 that they're spending on, and then how do we gonna help them reduce that by maybe like 1%, you're gonna be unicorn already.
Dr. Tian?
That's a good question. I don't know what kind of idea I would have. Like, I feel like everything I've thought about recently has been around like things that are in the present, and how we can really move away from easy metrics that we can do, and really focusing on the use cases and making things better. But if I were to go back, I might have run to a medical school instead of a grad school, and I don't know where I would be if that actually happens.
Yeah, so my wife's a doctor, and we keep having this argument that, you know, or rather she keeps saying that now AI is going to take away your job, but try replacing me, right? Like, I'm a surgeon. And I'm like, wait till Da Vinci becomes sentient. But I have 2 ideas. I have a 1-year-old, and I have just been obsessed with this idea of personalized education. I mean, I hate the, you know, 1 to 10th grade standard. I think it should not exist anymore, and personalized tutoring is the right way forward. And the other thing is, just recently, both in Silicon Valley and in Mumbai, we had the world's first AI film festival, where you had filmmakers just using AI to create these movies. And I've just been absolutely fascinated by that, because the way Sora 2, Nano Banana have just improved over the just last couple of months, I think we are well and truly entering this era of digital filmmaking that's just going to transcend all sort of boundaries. So I'd probably start like a media company, you know, fully powered by AI. So that's what I do. So with that, panelists, thank you so much. I'd love to open the floor for questions from the audience. We have one already. Yes.
Oh yeah, we have all the mics.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Vivu from KMTL. Hi, the radiology AI models, or some optical imaging AI models, I often use radiologists or pathologists to actually help basically level these ground truth, but those data are biased. And so, for example, at perceptor scale, have you found better ways to build a trustworthy labeling for these AI models for a better clinical validation beyond human?
How did we do it, right?
No, it's not how did we do it, but because these data are biased, right? Because it's clinician actually label them. How do you build a trustworthy labeling?
Okay. No, so first thing first, like we have to, if there's no better source of data, we have to neutralize it by gathering different opinions. And then when there are different opinions, I think it's less bias on that. For example, like one image could be coming from 2 or 3 different opinions, and then we take the majority as a level of the data. But we also have to improve from just opinion. We're trying to put more data that are more ground truth or more clinically proof that it's a positive or negative and what kind of disease that there is, and then put it back into the training so that we the model going to be more objective towards the real data, and then we might get something that's totally out of our domain knowledge that we know in the past. But that will also has to come gradually, because right now the gatekeeper are still the specialists, and when we are, when we're not answering the same or similar or has the solid proof that this is the disease, then they were not going to accept it. So we have to do the training and also has to do the validation based on the ground truth data that are scientifically proven.
And just to add on that, for some particular problems, you might be able to use a different modality in order to ascertain what kind of diagnosis or label that you need. An example that comes to mind was an MRI for prostate cancer. Sometimes people look at MRI and suspect a prostate cancer, but you don't know if there's a cancer or not. So people would get a biopsy to confirm, and you could use that biopsy label as something to de-bias your problem. Another thing that I've seen people do is to use people with higher level of expertise, but you have to be a little bit careful with this, because sometimes higher level of expertise doesn't necessarily translate to better outcome for patient. And I'm not saying that the experts are not good at what they do, but I'm thinking of prostate cancer, where there are papers that show that subspecialist grading would have better prognostic power, that is how much it can predict patient outcome, patient survival, than people who are not at that level. But we don't have the same study for breast cancer, for example. So I think those are the 2 other ways that I think you can use to help with that.
Well, I think it's a very important question about bias, because we've got some really scary examples of how we've taken and embedded some of these biases in these expert systems, and whether it's in kidney screening or other things that have amplified the dislocations between different racial segments or other things in America. And so, there's a fantastic book called Automating Inequality, which is the risk that we have when we take something that's biased and we don't see that, and then we put it into an algorithm and we let the machines go at it. Well, of course, that's going to just be, garbage in, garbage out. So we just have to be aware, and we have to make constantly improving systems. And we have to realize that even changing some of the things that we don't think of as really important aspects in the care delivery and workflow can also throw off those biases. So automation is great, but we've just got to really shape that workflow better.
I think what comes to my mind is Dr. Gassami's work from CSAIL lab. So Dr. Marzia Gassami does a lot of work in this space. In fact, there's a group we have called Healthy ML, which is focused on ensuring that data sets are free from bias. And a line that she uses often is that, AI can be used everywhere, but the real question is, should AI be used in certain use cases, especially in healthcare? I definitely recommend, some of her work in this space. She's done specific papers in AI bias in cardiovascular data, radiology data, and I think that would be helpful. Any other questions? Do we have time for more questions? Okay, one more question, if someone wants to go. Okay, okay, anyone? No. Okay, cool. So that's a wrap. I'd once again like to thank the amazing panelists. Thank you so much for all your insights. I've learned a lot. I'm sure the audience has learned as well. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to all our panelists, Mr. Senshu, Dr. Ronashai Zaransi, Mr. Pitaya Pisut, Professor Anjali Sastry, and of course, our moderator, Mr. Tavish Sanger, for such an engaging and thought-provoking discussion. Your insights have truthfully highlighted the exciting potential of artificial intelligence in clinical trials, and important roles that Southeast Asia can play as a hub of innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them one round of applause. We will now take a 15-minute break before coming back to our last session. We will reconvene at the room on 3:20 p.m. So please be back in the room by then as we continue with our last session. Thank you and enjoy your break.